Welcome back to my channel. My name is Jasmine, and the name of the channel is called Where Things Grow, where we are over here growing in Christ and all of the things, okay? Excuse me, if that's something that you are interested in, please feel free to subscribe to the channel. Also, give this video a thumbs up, leave a nice comment down below. And yeah, share this video on all of your social media platforms. And y'all, we are going to go on ahead and get into it. This is going to be part 2 of the Bible study that we had. It's a continuation from earlier, and we were talking about Esther earlier today. So we are going to go on ahead and complete the story of Esther, okay? Because the story of Esther is an amazing one. And if you really read it right and study it, it'll really bless you. So we are going to continue to talk about Esther. I'm going to give you all a little bit of time to get into the live. I'm going to give at least about 2 to 3 minutes, and then we'll move forward. But yeah, so that's where we were. Yeah, you guys, I've really been enjoying doing the live Bible study. Like I told y'all earlier, the Bible is my favorite book in the whole wide world. Like, I love reading the Bible. Everything is there. You can find everything in the scriptures. And the most important thing is that it's God's living word, and the words are still valid to this day. So, yep, I would highly suggest getting you a Bible. You can find a Bible on Amazon, really anywhere, like any bookstore. You can find a Bible anywhere. Um, it's not a situation where it's extremely expensive. You don't have to get the most expensive Bible. You can just get something that, makes sense, something that you can see, something that is easy for you to understand and read. I highly suggest the amplified version. And I'm probably being biased, but I like the amplified version because it expands. Hold on, y'all. Let me cut this rain down a little bit. I like to cut on the rain or like waves when I am reading because it helps to relax my mind and drown everything else out. So the only thing that I'm focused on is the actual scriptures, okay? But yeah, I'm biased. I love the amplified version simply because it's easy for me to understand. And then also, too, it expands a lot on the words and the different phrases, the scriptures. And so I love that. I need that. And yeah, so I highly suggest that, you all get an amplified Bible. Hi, Shanisha. Welcome to the live. Thank you so much for being here. And welcome. And also, if you can, thumbs up the video. Anybody watching this video, please feel free to give this video a thumbs up, you guys. Yeah, so yep, I'm gonna give you guys one more minute, and then we're gonna go on ahead and get started. But yeah, definitely consider getting a Bible. It's very impactful, very transformative, and it's very important to have, especially when it comes to your relationship with the Heavenly Father, okay? So yeah, the word is living, it's alive, and it is very effective. And it does say that in scripture. But I hope you all are having an amazing evening. I thought that coming live tonight, this evening to do Bible study was a great idea. So that is what we're here to do. Croissant, hello. Renee, hello. Hi, you guys. For everybody who's watching, please give this video a thumbs up for me. Also, if you all would like to donate to Where Things Grow, I do have a Cash App, and it is called Where Things Grow. So, yep, if that is something that you are interested in, please feel free to do so. You don't have to, no one's obligated. I just want to put that out there for you all. But yes, you guys. So, 7th 75th Rangers Recruiting. Hi, hello. Hi to everybody watching. Please feel free to give this video a thumbs up for me, so that YouTube so that YouTube can tell other people how amazing the video is and how you all are enjoying it so far. And they can go on ahead and, get everything squared away. All right, you guys. All right. You okay, you guys. So now again, today we are doing Bible study, okay? So we're going to be doing some, Bible study. It's a very serious thing. So if you're serious, then stay tuned and I hope you enjoy this video, okay? So we are about to go on ahead and get into it, you guys. So once again, today we are going to go on ahead and finish off the book of Esther, okay? And let's just put it down a little bit, okay? So the book of Esther comes after the book of Nehemiah and it comes before the book of Job, okay? Now, also, the book of Esther has a total of 10 chapters. Here we are going to start on chapter 4. That's where we left off in the first video. If you want to see the first part of this Bible study, that we did that video earlier this morning. It is posted on my page. So after this video, you can go over there and check that live video out. Okay. So yeah, but just to kind of, recap what we've already discussed so far regarding Esther. Okay. So, let me turn the rain down a little bit because I don't want it to distract you guys. All right. So far regarding Esther. Okay. Just to kind of give you guys a little bit more of just to go back. So in the book of Esther, it starts off with the banquets of the king. Okay, so the king, which his name is King Ahasuerus. Okay, so King Ahasuerus is having a banquet. All right. And so, with this banquet, he is having it for his officials and his attendants. Okay. So basically the who's who of the who's who is there. And so at this particular banquet, he's displaying the riches of his glorious kingdom and the splendor of his great majesty for many days. And it says 180 days in all. So King Ahasuerus is having a banquet. Now, Vashti, which is his wife, she's holding her own banquet, but this banquet is for the women. So they're over there. King Ahasuerus is over there. Of course, he's very, rich and he has all of the things. They have great food. It's just in the first, chapter here, the first few verses, the scene is being set for this party, this banquet that King Ahasuerus is having. So that's what's happening. Now, on the, let's see. All right, so there, after this happens, the king then holds a banquet for all the people who were present at the citadel in Susa, which is the capital, from the greatest in importance to the least, and it's a 7-day feast. So on the 7th day, he basically goes to his wife, Vashti, and he wants her to basically pose naked in front of everybody. Okay. So he wants Vashti to, Queen Vashti to only have on her robe and her turban in front of all of the officials and the who's who of the who's who, right? And so Vashti, being the classy, woman that she is, refused to do that. Okay. So at this point, the king, Ahasuerus, he is feeling some type of way. He feels disrespected. He feels like his wife did not fulfill his command. She basically disrespected him. And then they're also concerned that other women in the kingdom will find out what happened with her and that she disrespected her husband. And so, yeah, it's a bunch of ego stuff going on. He's struggling with his ego and all the things. All right. So that's where we are, right? So what he ends up doing is he decides that that Vashti, Queen Vashti, is no longer allowed to come before the king anymore, and that he needs to replace her because she is being disobedient. She is not listening. She is not doing what he asked her to do or commanded her to do. So long story short, you guys, I'm just, again, keeping you all up to speed, getting you all up to speed with what's going on. Okay. So at this point in the story, okay, Mordecai and Esther are introduced. Okay, so Mordecai is Esther's cousin. Okay, And so Mordecai, we don't know specifically what his role is in the kingdom, but he was some sort of an official in the service to the king. So he was basically serving the king in some sort of way. But again, he is the cousin to Esther. Now, Mordecai is a Jew. Okay, he's Jewish. He has the Jewish background, and so does Esther, his cousin. So what ends up happening is the king decides that he wants to replace his wife Vashti. And so he calls together all of the, beautiful young virgins in the land, okay? And so he finds favor with Esther. Esther was beautiful. However, her cousin Mordecai told her, do not tell the king that you are Jewish. Do not tell him about your background. And so she keeps that secret. She doesn't tell him that she's Jewish. But now Esther becomes the king, becomes the queen. So she replaces Queen Vashti. All right. So everything's under control. Everything's going good. Esther is now queen. Okay. So what happens after this is her cousin Mordecai, he ends up saving the king. The king basically has eunuchs, which are basically his attendants. They attend to the harem, but they have been castrated. Okay. So they don't have their parts, but they attend to him though. So he has two eunuchs, okay, and so one is named Bigthan and Teresh, and they basically become upset with him, and they conspire to, they're plotting against him. So basically conspired to attack him. All right. And so Mordecai finds out about this, right? So Mordecai goes which is Esther's cousin. Mordecai goes to tell Esther what's going on. Esther then tells the king Ahasuerus. King Ahasuerus does his research and he figures out in his investigation, and he finds out that it is true that they are planning on attacking him. And so they end up hanging the two men. And so whenever Esther goes to tell the king about this, she tells him that her cousin Mordecai is the one who, basically protected him, is the one where this word is coming from. And so it was recorded in the book of the Chronicles in the king's presence. So this was written down, okay? So yeah, so that's that. All right. So we're going to parking lot that for just a second. So now we get introduced to Haman. All right. So Haman gets promoted by King Ahasuerus. Okay. Haman is an Agite. Okay. Which is Agag is the short for that. So just to go back a little bit, one of the most important things to remember is that in the Bible, mostly everything is connected. Everything is connected to one another. And so if you go back to, I think this is in Second Samuel, First or Second Samuel, we see, I think it's First Samuel, but we see where the Lord tells King Saul. So remember, King Saul was king over Israel. So the Lord tells King Saul to get rid of Agag. Remember, Agag is the king. So the Lord tells him to get rid of him, to annihilate him, to completely destroy him and anything connected to him and all of the things, in the land or whatever the case is. And so Saul decides not to do that. He decides to keep Agag alive for a little while. And then he also takes some of the spoil. And spoil is basically like whatever is left over. It's like the plunder of whenever there's some sort of like battle or whatever is left over, from the people. So for example, if I'm battling against you and I win, and and like in Bible days, like it was a lot of killing in the Bible. So if I kill your side, everybody on that side, and then there's stuff left behind, and we get to, my side gets to get your stuff. Okay, I hope that makes sense. So anyways, Saul takes some of the stuff, but and he takes King Agag alive. He doesn't do what God told him to do. But that is very, very, very important in this story in Esther. Now, this is hundreds of years later, but it's important because if Saul had have listened and to God's command hundreds of years ago, then we probably wouldn't be having this issue here. So that is why our obedience to God is so important, because when we're disobedient, it's going to affect other people, and other things. So when God is calling us to do something, he's not just calling us to do this thing for us, or just for our benefit alone. You will benefit from what he's calling you to do. But just like we talked about with Jonah, like, it wasn't about Jonah, it was more so about the message that God called Jonah to spread to the people, so that the people would repent, have a change of heart, which they did, and they can in turn, become closer to the Lord. So it's all for God's glory. And that's what we have to remember. We have to take ourselves out of situations and not do what we think is right, because it's not about us. We have a mind, we are able to think, but we didn't create ourselves. So because of that, we always need to, refer back to the creator, so that we can understand as the creation what it is that we were created for. Okay? Y'all following me? So yes. So again, going back here, so we have Haman, all right? And Haman gets a promotion. Okay, Haman gets a promotion. And again, Haman is the Agite, right? So he gets a promotion, and now his authority is established over all the officials, who's with him. So he gets a promotion in the kingdom, okay? Now, what ends up happening is that all the king's servants who were at the king's gate in royal service, they bowed down and honored and paid homage to Haman, okay? For this is what the king had commanded in regard to him. So the king commands everybody, hey, when you see Haman, you bow down, you pay homage, you respect him, essentially you kind of worship him a little. And so Mordecai, and remember, he is Jewish, right? And he comes from the tribe of Benjamin. He did not bow down nor pay homage to him. Also, something to remember is that with so King Agag is from the Amalekites, okay? So if you read scripture, you know that there has always been this long-standing rift, or beef between the Jews and the Amalekites, okay? So remember, Haman is a Agite, okay? He's an Agite. And Mordecai is a Jew. So there's that, just automatic beef. Okay. But Mordecai, he didn't have, I don't think it was more beef. I just think that, Mordecai didn't serve men. Mordecai understood who the one true God is. Okay. And we're going to get to that part shortly. So Mordecai refused to bow down, right? So what happens is that, Haman, okay, so I'll read this part. So now it happened when they had spoken to him day after day, and he would not listen. So they're talking to Mordecai, telling him to bow down like day after day, and he refuses, right? That they told Haman to see whether Mordecai's reason for his behavior would stand as valid, for he had told them that he was a Jew. And again, the Jews and the Amalekites, had this long-standing beef, okay? But when Haman saw that Mordecai neither bowed down nor paid homage to him, he was furious. So long story short, Haman, instead of just destroying Mordecai, he gets so enraged and so mad, and his ego is so bruised, that he goes to the king and he tells them, hey, you know what? These Jews, they don't listen to your laws. They're here. They're in the land. They're basically a problem. They're problematic. And so I will pay someone to annihilate them and get rid of them at your command, at the command of the king. And so the king tells him, he signs off on it. He's like, fine, cool. That's fine, right? Now, mind you, the king's name is Ahasuerus, and he is married to a Jew. Remember, Esther is a Jew. But Haman decides that he wants to destroy all of the Jews, okay? He's mad at Mordecai, Esther's cousin, for not worshiping him and bowing down. So he goes to the king and tells the king that the Jews are problematic, and he wants to get rid of them. And the king signs off on it. And so now we're at the part where, and we left off on the part where letters have been sent all throughout the land, to let the Jews know in 12 months they're going to be annihilated. Okay. And it says that, and while the king and Haman sat down to drink, the city of Susa was perplexed by the unusual and alarming decree. So think about this, right? You're chilling in your house, everything's fine, and then you get a letter saying that you're going to be annihilated in 12 months. Now, mind you, this all takes place between Mordecai, Haman, all of this drama is going on in the kingdom, okay? But you're at home with your family, working hard, spending time with your family, doing what you do, and you get a letter saying you are going to be annihilated in a year because of your nationality. So when we talk about an alarming decree, like anybody would be alarmed. So that is where we are in this story right now. All right. So we are going to pick up where we left off in the first video. So I hope that I caught you all up on what's going on and where we are. So let's continue. And remember, Esther has 10 chapters. We are on chapter 4. And it's a pretty quick read, but I love Esther though. I love Esther. It's so full and it's amazing. So let's get into it. So it says, now when Mordecai learned of everything that had been done, he tore his clothes in mourning. So this is when Mordecai learned that the decree had been sent out for all of the Jews to be destroyed and annihilated. So he tore his clothes in mourning and put on sackcloth and ashes and went out into the center of the city and cried out loudly and bitterly. So Mordecai was stressed, y'all. He was very sad, obviously. And, something in the Bible that they did in these days when they were in mourning is they would tear their clothes and they would wear like sackcloth and then ashes on their head. Sackcloth was usually kind of like a rough type of fabric made from like animals' hair. So yeah. So he went only as far as the king's gate because no one was to enter the king's gate dressed in sackcloth. In each and every province that the decree and law of the king reached, there was great mourning among the Jews, y'all, with fasting, weeping, and wailing, and many lay on sackcloth and ashes. So, like I said, just imagine getting that notice that you are going to be annihilated in a year. You have absolutely no idea. It was unexpected, so that's where they are. Now, when Esther's maids and her eunuchs came and told her what had happened, the queen was seized by great fear. So remember, she's a Jew as well. Now, keep in mind, up until this point, she hasn't told her husband, King Ahasuerus, who has signed off on this decree that Haman, the one he promoted, has kind of conspired up, conjured up, if you will. She hasn't told her husband. So he doesn't even know that he's basically signed a decree to destroy her. And remember, she found favor with him. Like, he loved Esther. He thought she was beautiful, and she found favor among him, with him, in his eyes. So anyways, so Esther was seized with great fear. So she was scared, and she's the queen, right? She sent garments to clothe Mordecai. Okay, remember, that's her cousin, so that he would remove his sackcloth, but he did not accept them. Now, also, too, I forgot to cover this part, but Mordecai basically took Esther in. Esther's parents died. And so Mordecai took her in, and he basically helped to raise her. And so let's see, who is Mordecai is, hold on, y'all. Let me tell y'all how they're related. Hold on one second. His uncle's daughter. He was the guardian. Okay, so Esther was Mordecai's uncle's daughter. So Mordecai and Esther are cousins. But yeah, Mordecai took her in though when her parents died. All right, so at this point, Mordecai refuses the clothes. He doesn't want them. Okay. because he's in mourning. He's sad. He doesn't know. He's stressed out right now. So it says, then Esther summoned Haddock, one of the king's eunuchs, whom the one, wait a minute, y'all, I'm sorry. I can't read today, whom the king had appointed to attend her, and ordered him to go to Mordecai to find out what this issue was and why it had come about. So Haddock went out to Mordecai in the open square of the city, which was in front of the king's gate. Mordecai told him everything that had happened to him and the exact amount of money that Haman had promised to pay to the king's treasuries for the destruction of the Jews. Okay, so remember, like I said, Haman offered to pay to have this done. Okay, and just to be specific, Haman said, I will pay 10,000 talents of silver into the hands of those who carry out the king's business to put into the king's treasuries. Okay, so that is what he said. And to expand a little bit more, this money may have been what was expected to be received from the plunder of the Jews' property. So again, once the Jews would be annihilated in a year, they would plunder. They would take their stuff. And so, yeah. So, yeah, so just keep that in mind. So Mordecai also gave him a copy of the text of the decree which had been issued in Susa for the Jews' destruction, so that he might show Esther and explain it to her and order her to go into the king to seek his favor and plead with him for the lives of her people. Haddock came back and told Esther what Mordecai had said. Then Esther spoke to Haddock and ordered him to reply to Mordecai, saying, so at this point, Mordecai, he sends word. Okay, let me start over. So Esther's, her eunuch, okay, Haddock, she basically, which he attends her. So Haddock goes to Mordecai to figure out what's going on. What is the issue? Okay. And so Mordecai tells him. So Haddock goes back to Esther to tell her what Mordecai said. And so this is what Esther told Haddock to tell Mordecai. She said, all the king's servants and the people of the king's provinces know that for any man or woman who comes to the king to the inner court without being summoned, he has but one law, that he is to be put to death unless the king holds out to him the golden scepter so that he may live. And as for me, I have not been summoned to come to the king for these last 30 days. Okay. Now, it never expands on why Esther, for the last 30 days, she hasn't been able to go into the king, or basically she hasn't had contact with him, for the last 30 days. We don't know why. In the Bible, it does not tell us why. And that's sometimes how it is. Like, you'll read something and, sometimes it'll kind of be like, you'll be left to kind of imagine why or assume why. It's not always good to do that, because you don't want to necessarily add anything but to the text. But nothing is wrong with kind of like thinking like, I wonder why, but in this case we truly don't know. So basically Esther tells Mordecai, hey, listen, I haven't seen him in the last 30 days, and then also too, there's a law that you will be put to death if you go before him without being summoned, unless he holds out the golden scepter, you can live, right? So they told Mordecai what Esther had said. Okay, so this is what Esther sent. Remember, Haddock is her eunuch, which is going back and forth between her and Mordecai to deliver these messages. Then Mordecai told them to reply to Esther. He says, do not imagine that you and the king's palace can escape any more than all the Jews. So this is big, y'all. This is big. So Mordecai is telling her, listen, do not think because you're in the palace, you're going to escape. Like, no, you're a Jew. It's for you too. This decree that has gone out to destroy all the Jews, you're a Jew. You are included. Okay, so that's what he's telling her. For if you remain silent at this time, liberation and rescue will arise for the Jews from another place, and you and your father's house will perish, since you did not help when you had the chance. And who knows whether you have attained royalty for such a time as this and for this very purpose, y'all. Just got chills. Because this is so big. Um, a lot of like I said earlier, we have to remember it's not about us. And I think with Esther, she was thinking about her safety. She was thinking about her position. She was just thinking about herself, not to go as far as to say she was selfish, no, but in that moment, which we all have those moments too, Esther was thinking about Esther, and Mordecai tells her, and who knows whether you have attained royalty for such a time as this and for this very purpose. Before that, he also says, for if you remain silent at this time, liberation and rescue will arise for the Jews from another place. So, and this is the only book in the Bible where God's name is never mentioned. Okay? It's never mentioned. God is never brought up in this book in the Bible. This story, the testimony of Esther, never. But with more, like, we can clearly see and we can clearly know who Mordecai reverences and who he worships, okay? And so when he says for liberation, a liberation and rescue will arise for the Jews from another place, well, we know that he's talking about the Lord, okay? And so what he's telling Esther, he's trying to get her to understand, you may have been put in this position at this time. You may have been put in this position for this time, for such a time as this. And that's what we have to remember too. Like, sometimes we're very quick to kind of think about or consider, like, how will this benefit me? Or how will this thing not benefit me if I do this or if I do not do this thing? But, some of us have been put into positions to make a change. And really, we're all put in a position to make a change. But that is just one of the biggest things to kind of consider with this story. It's not about you. We have to die to ourselves and become, more alive, if you will, to God's will for our life, and think more in terms of his will than our own selfish desires and wants and needs, because again, it's not about us. And so, yeah, so that's what Esther, she's just concerned about her safety and overall well-being. So, yeah. But yes, so alrighty, so we're going to go ahead and continue to read. So it says, then Esther told them to reply to Mordecai, go, gather all the Jews that are present in Susa and observe a fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. I and my maids also will fast in the same way. Then I will go in to see the king without being summoned, which is against the law, and if I perish, I perish. Okay? So after Mordecai tells her, listen, honey, you are not going to escape destruction. Like, if you're in a position where you can help and you're not, like, and that's the other thing, y'all. Like, if you're in a position where you can help someone or something and you don't, you listen, that's not good. So never be found in that position where you can help, you can make a difference, and you don't. Like, that's not good, because again, sometimes God will call you to a certain place or position for such a time as this. And whatever that time is, I don't know, but we know when we're in a position to make a difference, so just make sure you're always, if you can make a difference, then do so. Okay. So at this point, Esther tells all the Jews, that are present in Susa, we're going to fast. And her women are fasting too. Her and her maids. So Mordecai went away and did exactly as Esther had commanded him. On the third day of the fast, Esther put on her royal robes and stood in the inner court of the king's palace opposite his throne room. The king was sitting on his royal throne facing the main entrance of the palace. When the king saw Esther, the queen, standing in the court, she found favor in his sight, and the king extended to her the golden scepter which was in his hand. So Esther approached and touched the top of the scepter. Okay, remember, Esther had said, hey, it's against the law to go before the king without being summoned. So if you do that and he hasn't summoned you and he doesn't pull out the scepter, then, or extend the scepter to you, then you could die, you know. But that didn't happen, because she was in the will of God. When you are in the will of God, something that may, let's see, maybe frowned upon, or maybe certain rules or regulations, it's not going to apply to you. Like, it's not, when you are in God's will. If God tells you to do something and you do that thing, you're going to, it's like this, you're immune. You get immunity, you know, because of the fact that you are under God's will. And it doesn't mean that everything is going to happen maybe the way you want it to, or perfectly, so to speak, but it's going to all happen within God's will. So that's just important to remember. You want to always be found in God's will. Okay. So she was in the will of God and he held out the scepter. So basically giving her, you know, the opportunity to approach him. So then the king said to her, what is troubling you, Queen Esther? So he could tell that she was troubled. And obviously, I mean, she came to see him, so that could indicate she was troubled too. Because remember, they hadn't, you know, she hadn't been summoned to come to the king for 30 days. So then the king said to her, what is troubling you, Queen Esther? What is your request? It shall be given to you up to half of the kingdom. So we see with the way he speaks to her so kindly and lovingly that he really, 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 you know, admires Esther, and he has respect for her as well. Okay. Yeah, and that's the thing, you know, with Queen Vashti in the beginning of the story, he's asking her, hey, can you take your robe off, and we'll keep your robe on and your turban, and that's it, you know, and stand in front of my guys and then twirl around and all of these things and let them see how beautiful you are, versus the way he's talking to Esther. Like, he's talking to her, what is troubling you, Queen Esther? What is your request? It shall be given to you up to half of the kingdom. That's funny, but anyways, just to expand a little bit on that up to half of the kingdom, this was probably a common expression of great generosity rather than a literal offer. So Esther said, if it pleases the king, may the king and Haman come this day to the banquet that I have prepared for him. So Esther has prepared a banquet, a dinner. She's having dinner. Then the king said, bring Haman quickly so that we may do as Esther says. So the king and Haman came to the banquet which Esther had prepared. Now remember, Haman is the one that the king, Esther's husband, it's King Ahasuerus. This is who he has promoted. Remember, he gave Haman a promotion. Okay. And Haman is also the one who gets upset with Esther's cousin because he doesn't bow down and worship him and pay homage to him the way he wants him to, and decides that he wants to annihilate all of the Jews. Okay. So just don't forget, you know, who these people are and where we are in the story. All right. So they have a banquet. Haman comes to the banquet. All right. So as they drank their wine at the banquet, the king said to Esther, what is your petition? And just to expand on that, having been sumptuously entertained at the banquet, the king was now obligated by tradition to grant Esther something better in return. Okay. So he says, what is your petition? It shall be granted to you. And what is your request? Even to half of the kingdom it shall be done. Then Esther replied, my petition and my request is this. If I have found favor in the sight of the king, and if it pleases the king to grant my petition and do as I request, may the king and Haman come to the banquet that I will prepare for them, and tomorrow I will do as the king says and express my request. Okay? So, Esther is playing. She's doing, let me see, would I have done that? I don't know, maybe. But she's like, you know what, we're going to have another dinner. Let's have another dinner. So she plans another banquet for the next day. And so Haman went away that day joyful and in good spirits. Haman is feeling good, okay? But when he saw Mordecai at the king's gate refusing to stand up or show fear before him, he was filled with rage toward Mordecai, okay? Nevertheless, Haman controlled himself and went home. There, he sent for his friends and his wife Zeresh. Then Haman recounted to them the glory of his riches, the large number of his sons, and every instance in which the king had magnified him, and how he had promoted him over the officials and servants of the king. Okay, so y'all listen, Haman is feeling himself. Okay, he's got this new promotion, he got himself a new job. We all know with the promotion, it comes with an increase in pay. You know, he has a new status. He's just feeling himself like he just got invited, to a banquet with the king and his queen, and he's getting invited to a banquet tomorrow, and he's just feeling himself. Haman, like he's really feeling himself right now, right? So Haman also said, even Queen Esther let no one but me come with the king to the banquet she had prepared. And tomorrow also I am invited by her together with the king. See how he's feeling himself, y'all? Like he's very prideful at this point. Yet all of this does not satisfy me as long as I see Mordecai the Jew sitting at the king's gate. So Haman is so overcome with hatred, and he's angry at Mordecai because Mordecai is not bowing down to him and giving him the respect that he believes he deserves. Okay. So then his wife Zeresh and all his friends said to him, have a gallows 50 cubits high made, and in the morning ask the king to have Mordecai hanged on it. Then go joyfully to the banquet with the king. And the advice pleased Haman, so he had the gallows made. Yeah, Shanisha, I'm telling you, his pride, he's feeling himself. Okay. So just to expand a little bit on the 50 cubits, that's about 75 feet. This may instead have been a pole or a spike for impalement. Okay, so Haman tells his wife and his friends to have a gallows made, okay? And in the morning, ask the king to have Mordecai hanged on it. Now, although the king has already agreed to have the Jews annihilated within a year, Haman is so overcome by anger. He really just has this disdain, and he just doesn't like Mordecai. So he wants to get rid of Mordecai right now. So he says, you know what? Y'all go on ahead, get this gallows made, basically where he can be hung on it. He's like, you know what, tomorrow I'm going to ask the king to have Mordecai hanged on it, and then after we hang Mordecai, I'm going to go to the dinner because his queen invited me to dinner tomorrow night. Okay, so this is Haman, this is his attitude. Okay, so on that night, okay, the king could not sleep. Okay, so he ordered that the book of records and memorable deeds, the chronicles, be brought, and they were read before the king. Now remember, Mordecai, remember when he saved the king's life? Okay, because his eunuchs were planning on killing him. But Mordecai saved his life by telling Esther, and Esther told her husband, and therefore those two that had planned on killing the king were killed. And this was recorded in the book, and this was recorded for like memorable deeds. So the king cannot sleep. Okay, we see God working all throughout this story. The king's having trouble sleeping, and he ordered that the book of records and memorable deeds, the chronicles, be brought, and they were read before the king. Okay, now and when it says the king could not sleep, that means the king's sleep fled. Okay, so king sleep fled away. So he was wide awake. He could not sleep at all. So much so that he wanted to listen to the reading of a book. Okay, so it was found written there how Mordecai had reported that Bigthana and Teresh, two of the king's eunuchs, who were doorkeepers, had planned to attack King Ahasuerus. The king said, what honor or distinction has been given Mordecai for this? So the king is asking, wait a minute, what do we do for Mordecai? He saved my life. What do we do for him? Then the king's servants who attended him said, nothing has been done for him. So the king finds out that, wait a second, this man saved my life. And he's like, well, what did we do for him? And his servants are like, well, we didn't do anything for him. Okay, nothing has been done for him. And so the king said, who is in the courtyard? Now Haman had just entered the outer court of the king's palace to ask the king about hanging Mordecai on the gallows which he had prepared for him. Okay, So at this very moment, when the king is asking his servants, he's like, you know what honor or distinction has been given to Mordecai for saving my life? And they're like, nothing has been done for them, right? So the king is like, who's in the court right now? And Haman just so happened to be out there, but Haman was coming to the king to ask him about hanging Mordecai, the same Mordecai that saved the king's life at that very moment. So you see how your enemy can be trying to work on some things and conspire against you, but God is working on some things to promote you right in the presence of your enemy. Like, do not play with the Lord at all. Like, this is God all throughout this, right? So, okay, boom. So the king finds out Haman's outside, right? So the king's servant said to him, look, Haman is standing in the court. And the king said, let him come in. Bring him in here. So Haman came in, and the king said to him, what is to be done? Now, mind you, the king didn't mention specifically that he was talking about Mordecai. All the king says is, what is to be done for the man whom the king desires to honor? Now, Haman thought to himself, whom would the king desire to honor more than me? So remember, Haman is prideful. He was just telling his wife and his officials and his friends, like, hey, listen, I'm having dinner with him and his wife tomorrow. It's just gonna be me and them. Like, I just got a promotion. I just got a new job. Like, listen, y'all, he was on top of the world. And so when the king asked this question, Haman thought, you know what? He can't be talking about nobody but me. So Haman's answer is going to be based on his heart desires and what he believes should be done for him, because he thinks that the king is talking about him, right? So Haman said to the king, for the man whom the king desires to honor, let a royal robe be brought when the king has worn. No, let a royal robe be brought which the king has worn, and the horse on which the king has ridden, and on whose head a royal crown has been placed. And let the robe and the horse be handed over to one of the king's most noble officials. Let him dress the man whom the king delights to honor in the royal robe. Excuse me. And lead him on horseback through the open square of the city, and proclaim before him, this is what shall be done for the man whom the king desires to honor. So y'all listen, excuse me. Haman, he's like, you know what? Who else would the king want to honor except me? Like, of course he's talking about me. So you know what, king? What I think you should do is, the person you want to honor, have them ride through the city so everybody can see them. Have them on a horse in royal attire so everybody can see them. You know, so this is what Haman is saying, okay? Put a crown on his head too. This is what Haman is saying. So it says, then the king said to Haman, quickly take the royal robe and the horse, as you have said, and do this for Mordecai the Jew, who is sitting at the king's gate. Leave out nothing of all that you have said. Do y'all see that? I hope y'all are hearing me and listening, and I hope y'all are getting it. Do you see how people, there can be this plot against you. There can be a plot to destroy you. And literally within that, God can be using it to bless you and promote you. Mordecai had no idea that that thing, saving the king's life that time ago, was going to, kind of make his life go in the direction that it did. But it speaks to Mordecai's character. We could tell Mordecai was just a genuine guy, and a loving guy. He essentially adopted Esther, his cousin. He saved the life of the king. And he also attended the king as well. He was at the king's gate. So Mordecai was a great dude. He was a good dude. So Haman took the royal robe and the horse and dressed Mordecai and led him on horseback through the open square of the city, proclaiming before him, this is what shall be done for the man whom the king desires to honor. Okay, so y'all listen, poor Haman and his pride. Okay, he's already thinking that the king was asking or talking about him, and he finds out that the king, now remember, Haman was going to the king to ask him to hang Mordecai because Mordecai would not bow down to Haman and show homage to him and worship him. So he was going to the king to ask the king to destroy him. But see, the king couldn't sleep that night. So the king asked them to read him this book, about memorable acts, nice things that people had done, great things, memorable things that people had done. And so the part was read about how Mordecai saved his life that time ago. And the king said, well, wait a minute, what have we done for him? What has been done for Mordecai? And they say, well, nothing, And so the king's like, well, hey, is anybody in the courtyard? And they're like, yeah, Haman's out there, and there's no such thing as coincidences. God causes or allows everything to happen. So he causes Haman to be right where he is. And Haman comes into the king, and the king says, you know, um, what is to be done for the man whom the king desires to honor? And so Haman gives him this whole rundown about what he thinks the king is wanting to do, should do for the person. But he thinks he's the person, but he's not the person. The person that the king is wanting to honor is the person that Haman was about to ask him to kill in the morning. So anyways, okay. So Haman is the one who has to lead Mordecai through the city, so he's leading him through the city on horse, walking the horse, as Mordecai is sitting there with his royal robe, his royal attire, and all of the things, okay? So it says, then Mordecai returned to the king's gate. So he went back to doing what he was doing already, But Haman hurried to his own house, mourning and with his head covered in sorrow. He said, wow. Haman was defeated, y'all. He felt defeated, right? So it says, then Haman told Zeresh, his wife, and all his friends everything that had happened to him. Then his wise counselors and his wife Zeresh said to him, if Mordecai, before whom you have begun to fall in status, is of Jewish heritage, you will not overcome him, but will certainly fall before him. While they were still speaking with him, the king's eunuchs' attendants arrived and hurriedly brought Haman to the banquet which Esther had prepared. So Haman didn't even have time to plan anything else. They're like, hey, Mordecai, if he rises, and he's of Jewish heritage, you're not gonna overcome him. You're gonna fall, like you're gonna perish. But he didn't have time to scheme and scam anything. They hurriedly snatched him up and took him because it was time for dinner time. All of that happened. It was time for dinner now. This beautiful banquet that he was just now bragging about, that he had been invited to, but with King Esther and her husband, right? So the king and Haman came to drink wine with Esther the queen. And the king said to Esther on the second day, also as they drank their wine, what is your petition? Queen Esther, it shall be granted to you, and what is your request? Even to half of the kingdom it shall be done. Then Queen Esther replied, if I have found favor in your sight, O king, and if it pleases the king, let my life be spared as my petition, and my people be spared as my request. For we have been sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, killed, and wiped out of existence. Now, if we had only been sold as slaves, men and women, I would have remained silent, for our hardship would not be sufficient to burden the king by even mentioning it. Then King Ahasuerus asked Queen Esther, who is he, and where is he who dares to do such a thing? So the king says, well, wait a minute. So, okay, Esther is telling him, listen, if it pleases the king, let my life be spared and my people as well. Okay. For we have been sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, killed, and wiped out of existence. So the king, with his response, he said, who is he and where is he who dares to do such a thing? So he is upset, y'all. The king is upset. He's like, well, wait a second. Who has decided that this is going to happen? Who did this? Esther said, an adversary and an enemy is Haman, this evil man. Then Haman became terrified before the king and queen. Now, mind you, they are the only ones at this dinner. This dinner that Haman was just bragging about it. He felt so special. But Esther told her husband what happened. So let's see what's gonna happen next, y'all. Okay, I'm telling you, the Bible is drama. Okay, for those of you who think, oh, the Bible is too much, it's like, I don't know. Listen, it's drama. Okay, so it says, then in his fury, the king stood up from drinking wine and went into the palace garden to decide what he should do. But Haman stayed to plead for his life with Queen Esther, for he saw that harm had been determined against him by the king. When the king returned from the palace garden to the place where they were drinking wine, Haman was falling on the couch where Esther was. Then the king said, will he even attempt to assault the queen with me in the palace? So the king goes outside, right? He's walking back and forth. He's like, you know what? I got to figure out what I'm going to do about the situation, right? Because he's angry. While he's outside walking back and forth, pacing back and forth, figuring out how he's going to avenge his beautiful queen, who has now told him that it's Haman who has, decided that her and her people are going to be destroyed, right? Haman is inside pleading for his life, pleading, Queen Esther, please, 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 please. Now that's all he's doing. But when the king comes back in, it looks as if he's trying to assault her. Because it says that Haman was falling on the couch where Esther was. So it looked like he was trying to assault her, but he really was just begging for his life. So it just looked really bad, y'all. It just looked really bad for him. So the king said, will he even attempt to assault the queen with me in the palace? The king is like, not only did you sat up here and now you want to destroy and wipe out all her people, but you're also trying to assault my queen too? That sent him over, y'all. So as the king spoke those words, the servants covered Haman's face in preparation for execution. Because, yeah, the king was not having it. So it says, then Harbona, one of the eunuchs serving the king, said, now look, there are gallows 50 cubits, 75 feet high, standing at Haman's house, which Haman made for Mordecai, whose good warning saved the king. And the king said, hang him on it. So they hanged Haman on the gallows that he had prepared for Mordecai. Then the king's anger subsided. Well, will you look at that? Now remember, Mordecai had told his friends the night before, he said, hey, you know what? Let's make this gallows here because we're going to hang Mordecai on it. I'm tired of seeing him. He's disrespecting me. He refuses to worship and pay homage to me the way I think he should. We're going to hang him. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to ask the king, can he do it? I just want to ask him about it. But when he goes in to ask the king in turn asks him a question about how should the king honor someone who saved his life? And so, y'all, this is a mess. So Haman is hanged on the exact gallows that he built to hang someone else on. So that's what it means when you dig graves for people, dig one for yourself too, So isn't that crazy, y'all? I'm telling you, the Bible is tea, okay? So on that day, King Ahasuerus gave the house of Haman, and that means all the property and possessions of Haman, the enemy of the Jews, to Queen Esther. And Mordecai came before the king. And Mordecai came before the king because Esther had disclosed what relation he was to her. So now this is when Esther had told the king, he's my cousin and he's also my guardian as well, right? So the king took off his signet ring, which he had taken away from Haman, and gave it to Mordecai. Y'all, the honor was transferred from Haman to Mordecai. Isn't that a blessing? Wow. Oh my goodness. People think they're trying to destroy you, honey. Everything that they have, God may give it all to you. I'm just saying, God may either cause or allow something to happen, and that'll transfer all of that honor over to you and give you all of their stuff, everything to you. Just saying. And Esther put Mordecai in charge of the house of Haman. Then Esther spoke again to the king and fell down at his feet and wept and implored him to avert the evil plot of Haman the Agagite and his plan which he had devised against the Jews, because the decree to annihilate the Jews was still in effect. Remember, this decree was to happen in 12 months, but it was still into effect. Then the king held out to Esther the golden scepter. So Esther arose and stood before the king. Then she said, "If it pleases the king, and if I have found favor before him, and the matter is proper in the king's view, and I am pleasing in his sight, let it be written to revoke the letters devised by Haman, the son of Hammedatha the Agagite, which he wrote in order to destroy the Jews who are in all the king's provinces. For how can I endure to see the tragedy that will happen to my people? Or how can I endure to see the destruction of my kindred?" Then King Ahasuerus said to Queen Esther and to Mordecai the Jew, "Behold, I have given Esther the house of Haman, and they have hanged him on the gallows because he stretched out his hand against the Jews. Also, concerning the Jews, write as you see fit in the king's name, and seal it with the king's signet ring. For a decree which is written in the king's name and sealed with the king's signet ring may not be revoked." So the king, the decree for them to be destroyed, he can't revoke it, y'all. He couldn't revoke it. It says, "A decree which is written in the king's name and sealed with the king's signet ring may not be revoked." Okay, but he's telling them to write another one. So the king's scribes were called at that time in the 3rd month, that is the month of Sivan, on the 23rd day, and it was written in accordance with everything that Mordecai commanded to the Jews, to the chief rulers, satraps, and the governors and officials of the provinces, which extended from India to Ethiopia, Cush, 127 provinces, to every province in its own script writing, and to every people in their own language, and to the Jews according to their script in their language. He wrote a decree in the name of King Ahasuerus and sealed it with the king's ring, and sent letters by couriers on horseback, riding on the royal male relay horses, the offspring of the racing mares. So these horses were fast, y'all. In it, the king granted the Jews who were in every city the right to assemble and to defend their lives, to destroy, to kill, and to annihilate any armed force that might attack them, their little children and women, and take the enemy's goods as plunder. So, again, once the king signs a decree, right? It's written in his name, it's sealed with his signet ring. He can't revoke it. So, what Haman had in place to annihilate the Jews, the king could not revoke it. There had to be a new decree written. So in this new decree that was written, he gave the Jews permission and basically to defend themselves and annihilate anyone who tried to come against them and take all their stuff. So that's what he did. On one day in all the provinces of King Ahasuerus, the 13th day of the 12th month, that is the day of Adar. Okay. A copy of the edict was to be issued as a law in every province and as a proclamation to all peoples, so that the Jews would be ready on that day to avenge themselves on their enemies. Excuse me. So the couriers, who were mounted on the royal relay horses, left quickly, urged on by the king's command, and the decree was issued at the citadel in Susa, the capital. Then Mordecai departed from the presence of the king in royal apparel of blue and white, with a large crown of gold, and with a robe of fine linen and purple wool, and the city of Susa shouted and rejoiced. For at this time the Jews had light, a dawn of new hope, and gladness and joy and honor. So the Jews felt better, y'all. They said, you know what? Well, it's still on, right? The battle is still going to happen, but we have been given permission to defend ourselves. So they felt better. In each and every province and in each and every city, wherever the king's command and his decree arrived, the Jews celebrated with gladness and joy, a feast and a holiday. And many among the peoples of the land became Jews, for the fear of the Jews and their God had fallen on them. So they embraced Judaism. Okay, so these people became Jews because they're like, well, wait a second. The favor these people have, I want some of that. So I'm gonna convert. So that's what happens. Now, in the 12th month, y'all, the month where it's time for them to be annihilated. Remember, Haman said, yeah, they need to get up out of here. I want them gone. So we get to the 12th month, y'all. Now, in the 12th month, that is the month of Adar, on the 13th day, when the king's command and edict were about to be executed, on the very day when the enemies of the Jews had hoped to gain power over them and slaughter them, it happened the other way around, so that the Jews themselves gained power over those who hated them. The Jews assembled in their cities throughout the provinces of King Ahasuerus to apprehend those who wanted to do them harm, and no one could stand before them, for the fear of them and their God had fallen on all the peoples. Even all the officials of the provinces and the chief rulers, satraps, and the governors, and those who attended to the king's business supported the Jews. The Jews had the support of everybody, y'all, in defeating their enemies, because the fear of Mordecai and his God's power had fallen on them. For Mordecai was great and respected in the king's palace, and his fame spread throughout all the provinces, for the man Mordecai became greater and greater. So the Jews struck all their enemies with the sword, killing and destroying them, and they did what they pleased to those who hated them. At the citadel in Susa, the Jews killed and destroyed 500 men, and they killed Parshandatha, Dalphon, Aspatha, Paratha, Adalia, Aradatha, Parmashtha, Arasai, Aradai, and Vizatha, the ten sons of Haman. Okay, so these are his sons. The 10 sons of Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Jews' enemy, but they did not lay their hands on the plunder. On that day, the number of those who were killed at the citadel in Susa was reported to the king. The king said to Queen Esther, the Jews have killed and destroyed 500 men and the 10 sons of Haman at the citadel in Susa. What then have they done in the rest of the king's provinces? Now what is your petition? It shall be granted to you. What is your further request? It shall also be done. So the king, he wants to do more for her, y'all. He wants to do more. He really, we started, it's so interesting how this story is wrapping up, y'all. Because we started the story where King Ahasuerus is asking his queen, or commanding his queen Vashti to go before these men, take all her clothes off, just have her robe and her crown on, and just kind of, be around and or whatever, and just stand there and be beautiful. But the way he respects Esther is just out of this world. So anyways, Esther replied, if it pleases the king, let it be granted to the Jews who are in Susa to act tomorrow also in accordance with the decree of today, and let the dead bodies of Haman's 10 sons be hanged on the gallows. So the king commanded it to be done. The decree was given in Susa, and they hanged the bodies of Haman's 10 sons, y'all. Remember, Haman is the one who said he wanted all the Jews annihilated, and he got annihilated. Okay, his plan turned every single thing that he wanted to do to the Jews, it turned right back around on him. Okay, so not only him, but his sons, they were hung on the gallows. The Jews who were in Susa also gathered together on the 14th day of the month of Adar and killed 300 men in Susa, but they did not lay their hands on the plunder. Now the rest of the Jews who were in the king's provinces assembled to defend their lives and rid themselves of their enemies, and killed 75,000 of those who hated them, but they did not lay their hands on the plunder. This was done on the 13th day of the month of Adar, and on the 14th day they rested and made it a day of feasting and rejoicing, y'all. Listen, y'all, the 13th was the day when they were supposed to be annihilated, okay? You see how God will turn a thing around? Like, we think whatever the thing is, whatever we're going through, whatever the situation is, whatever is happening is final. But no, that's not always the case. God can still turn it around just like that. So that's what this testimony of Esther should teach us. It says, but the Jews who were in Susa assembled on the 13th and on the 14th of the same month. And on the 15th day they rejoiced it and made it a day of feasting and rejoicing. Therefore, the Jews of the villages who lived in the rural, unwalled towns made the 14th day of the month of Adar a holiday for rejoicing and feasting and sending choice portions of food to one another. Now Mordecai recorded these events, and he sent letters to all the Jews who lived in all the provinces of King Ahasuerus, both near and far, obliging them to celebrate the 14th day of the month of Adar and the 15th day of the same month annually, because on those days the Jews rid themselves of their enemies, and as the month which was turned for them from grief to joy and from mourning into a holiday, that they should make them days of feasting and rejoicing and sending choice portions of food to one another and gifts to the poor. So they wanted to make it something annually that they would celebrate. So that's another thing God got out of this, y'all. Now it's an annual thing. This is something that they're celebrating annually. Their victory. So the Jews undertook what they had started to do and what Mordecai had written to them. For Haman the son of Hammedatha the Agagite, the enemy of all the Jews, had plotted against the Jews to destroy them, and had cast pur, that is the lot, to find the right time to disturb and destroy them. But when it came before the king, he commanded in writing that Haman's wicked scheme, which he had devised against the Jews, was to return on his own head, and that he and his son should endure what he planned for the Jews and be hanged on the gallows. Therefore, they call these days Purim, after the name Pur, which means lot. After the name Pur, meaning lot. And because of all the instructions in this letter and what they had faced in this regard and what had happened to them, the Jews established and made it a custom for themselves and for their descendants and for all who joined them, so that they would not fail to celebrate these 2 days as it was written and at the appointed time annually. God says, you know what? Y'all are going to be celebrating in a year, This day that you all are thinking that you're going to be destroyed and annihilated. No, I'm going to make it a holiday. Okay, I'm going to give y'all the victory. All right, so it says these days were to be remembered and celebrated throughout every generation, every family, every province, and every city. And these days of Purim were not to cease from among the Jews, nor their memory fade from their descendants. When Queen Esther, the daughter of Abihail, with Mordecai the Jew, wrote with full power and authority. No, it says, then Queen Esther, the daughter of Abihail, with Mordecai the Jew, wrote with full power and authority to confirm the second letter about Purim. He sent letters to all the Jews to the 127 provinces of the kingdom of Ahasuerus in words of peace and truth, to establish these days of Purim to be observed at their appointed times, just as Mordecai the Jew and Queen Esther had established for them, and as they had established for themselves and for their descendants, with instructions regarding their times of fasting and their lamentations, which lamentations means expressions of needing help and like expressions of grief. The command of Esther established these customs for Purim, and it was written in the book of the royal archives. King Ahasuerus imposed a tax on the land and on the coastlands of the sea, and all the accomplishments of his authority and strength, and the full account of the greatness of Mordecai, to which the king had raised him, are they not written in the book of the chronicles of the kings of Media and Persia? For Mordecai the Jew was second only to King Ahasuerus, and great among the Jews, and in favor with his many fellow people, for he worked for the good of his people, and spoke for the welfare and peace of his whole nation. Y'all, and that is the end of the book of Esther, okay? So, the way the book starts, it ends completely different, but some things that we can, that are monumental and that we can take away from the book of Esther is that, it's not about us. We definitely shouldn't be prideful, but we have to remember that, again, God is the creator, and he has purposes and plans and a calling for all of our life. And some of us will be placed in certain positions in life, will be positioned and, and planted and just placed in certain places. so that we can be used by the Lord. God wants to use us, and more importantly, He wants to know that you are willing to be used. So imagine if Esther hadn't have spoken up. Imagine if she hadn't have said anything. Imagine if she had just said, you know what, I'm in this palace. I am a queen now. I have obtained royalty. Y'all are struggling out there, even though I'm a Jew, but y'all are going through it. Y'all are just going to have to figure it out. That has nothing to do with me. I can't go before the king. I haven't been summoned. I'm going to lose my life. Like, just imagine if all she was thinking about was herself, you know? Excuse me. So, yeah, this is just very, very, it's a really great read, y'all. Like I said, it's not as long. Excuse me, y'all. I had dinner a couple of hours ago, so I'm so sorry for burping. But yeah, so it's not a extremely long read, but it's very, very powerful. And yeah, we just see that, you know what, your enemies, that's another thing that comes from it. Your enemies may very well plot on your downfall. You know, they may even come up with a plan that's an established plan. But just know that God has the last say, that no one has the last say over your life except for the one who actually created you. So if you're going through things in life where you go through different experiences, and you know, it just looks like it's not going to get any better, and you know the situation isn't going to improve, or maybe at your job people are plotting on you, or in your family people are plotting, or just whatever, wherever, just know that God has the last say, and no one has power and control over your life, not even the enemy, not even you. Okay, we don't even have power and control. You know, God is either causing something to happen or allowing something to happen, but He's doing it all for His glory, and we are here for His glory, y'all. That's it. We're not here for our own, for us, you know. Yes, we get to benefit from being alive. You know, we get the benefits of, you know, just experiencing life and being here on earth, right? But we are here for the glory of God, you know, and we just have to remember that. In the moment that we step outside of that and we become prideful, you know, like Mr. Haman in the story, you know, you lose your mind, you know, you begin to lose, um, you know, because you don't remember the reason, you know. So it's great that Esther, you know, she just put herself aside, she fasted, and she said, you know what, if I die, then I just die. You know, but the last thing I want to do is be found not, you know, not attempting to help. Like, even if she had have lost her life when she went into the king, you know, to request that first banquet, but at least she tried, you know. So, and that's what we need to be, willing to try. If you're in a position to make a difference in someone's life, or if you're in a position to make a difference just in general in any aspect, you should be making a difference, or you should at least try. Because what happens is that God is going to, especially if it's within His will, He is going to meet you along the way. Like, He's going to meet you halfway, and that's what He did with Esther. He met her halfway. She didn't lose her life. You know, she was in within God's will, but her not asking, her not saying anything, her thinking about herself, that's outside of God's will. And we know this because Jesus tells the Pharisees in the New Testament, when they ask Him, what is the greatest commandment? He says the first greatest commandment is that you love God with all of your heart, mind, and soul. But the second greatest commandment is that you love your neighbor as you love yourself, or as God has loved you. And so in this story, this is a perfect example. You know, Mordecai loved his neighbor because he protected the king. He saved the king's life. Esther, she thought about her neighbors, the Jews. She loved them enough to risk her life. We have to love our neighbor, because if it was just about us, we wouldn't be put here on earth with people. It's not about us. You know, it is about the community. It is about love, you know, and that is what the Bible is about. Like, if you want to know what is the Bible about, it is about God's love. It's about love, y'all. Okay? And all throughout the Bible, all throughout scripture, we see so many different stories about God's love. We see God's love and His sovereignty and His mercy and grace demonstrated in every story. Even in the book of Jonah that we read a couple of days ago, that he loved the people of Nineveh so much so that he would send someone there. And they weren't Jews, the people of Nineveh, they were the Gentiles. So Jonah was sent there to preach basically repentance, because of the city of Nineveh. They were, y'all know the city of Nineveh. It's a part of Babylon, and they worship all these false gods, and it was a lot of idolatry and shenanigans going on over there. So Jonah is sent over there to preach repentance, and he does that, after running away. But he finally does it, and the people repent, and God, decides not to destroy them in 40 days. But that was a display of God's love. And yes, we read in scripture that God is unchanging, but God does have the right to change his mind. We see all throughout scripture where God changes his mind, and God changing his mind sometimes is dependent on what we do. It's depending on what we do, or maybe who is praying on your behalf. Because with the children of Israel, God was, listen, it was so many times where God told Moses, listen, I'm going to destroy them. I'm going to bless you. But Moses prayed for them. He interceded for them, and God said, okay, because of your prayers, I'm not going to do it. But God has that right. And so that's us appealing to the love, his that part of his nature, the love aspect, and his mercy and grace. And God is very merciful and graceful. So for those of you out there, definitely get into your Bible. It is a really great book. It is very transformative. It is life-changing. And if you are wondering or feeling like you're not close to the Lord and you want to get more closer to the Lord, in addition to praying, you also want to make sure you read your Bible as well, because the scriptures are God-breathed, meaning that God approved all of this. So when you see, when you're reading about Moses and David and Peter and Joseph and Jacob and Isaac and Abraham and everybody you read about, everything we're reading about, God approved. Okay, this is his living word. And so I don't care if it's 3024, the word is still valid. It's still very much so valid. Even the book of Esther, we were able to pull so many gems, and I encourage you also read it on your own, but we were able to pull so many gems out of that book that is very relevant in 2024, very relevant to today. Because some people like to say, oh well, yeah, this Bible was written over 3,000, 4,000 years ago, so that's not. No. It's very much so valid to this day. Okay, every testimony, the testimony of Joshua, Ruth, who else? Jonah, David, Joseph, all of these people, these wonderful people, these testimonies and stories, it can teach us so much about life, you guys, and it's very relevant. So I hope you guys enjoyed tonight's Bible study. It was fun. I absolutely love reading the Bible. I love to read. Like, a little fun fact is when I was in school and the teacher would ask us to read out loud, I would always raise my hand because I just love to read, you guys. I love to read. That was one of my favorite things to do growing up. But yes, I hope you all enjoyed tonight's Bible study. Stay tuned for our next Bible study. I think I may just do it in the evening time. I don't know, y'all. I may just do it whenever the Lord, actually I am going to do it when the Lord leads me to do it. I don't want to set any type of schedule or anything, but I do have a playlist here on the channel with our live streams, like for Bible studies. So this video will be on that playlist. So y'all be sure to check it out. If you came in towards the end and you missed some, it'll be on that playlist. But yes, I love you all so much. Thank y'all for watching and tuning in. And I will see you in the next video. Bye, y'all.